Hello and welcome to the June 2024 monthly market update from Kingdom Focus Financial. Today's webinar is hosted by Michael Smith and Chuck Etzweiler. Take it away.
Hey, thanks, Derek, and thank you everyone who's tuning in to watch this. I appreciate the confidence that you have in us. We've got a lot of stuff to go over today, so I'm not going to take a lot of time for chit chat. I want to jump right in. Those of you who have been working with us know both myself and Chuck pretty well at this point, and wanted to continue on in our discussion, as we said this year, under our theme of four. And this week, we're working in talking about oil, the O that's there. We'll give you a little tidbit at the end of just our presidential election year updates and trends to keep you on track as well. Probably going to be closer to 15 minutes this week. So make sure if you're starting this, that you're in a spot you can give us about that much time. But I think you'll find it helpful. And as always, we're here to serve you. So feel free to follow up with our office if you have any additional questions. Chuck, lots on tap. I'm going to turn it over to you, let you dive right in and share with us some of your thoughts here.
Absolutely, Michael. Thanks for having me once again, and our listeners too. Always a pleasure. We got a big one today, and it's the big O, as you said. It's oil. It comes as a surprise, Michael, to many people that as of 2018, the United States, by country measurement, is the world's largest producer of crude oil. You can see here on our chart that it started in 2018. We barely eclipsed Saudi Arabia and brown and Russia in rust. But look at the far right-hand part of the chart. You can see that we have eclipsed them significantly. Now, here's the interesting thing, Michael. If we were to include not only just crude oil, but shale oil, oil sands, other distillates, natural gas liquids, and we converted those to a per barrel, we're at 20 million barrels per day, a double Russia, and significantly above that of Saudi Arabia. A matter of fact, if you took the United States map, Michael, and you were to look at the 50 states, 32 states actually produce crude oil or its byproducts. So what does this all mean? It meant to us in the beginning of the year, as you said, our acrostic four, F-O-U-R, the O signified in that particular acrostic that as crude oil went in price, we believe the U.S. economy would go and the stock market would follow. The days when higher oil prices, now there's a limit certainly, but we always took the knee-jerk reaction that high oil prices led to high gasoline prices, which led to a economy that wasn't moving on all cylinders. That's no longer the case. When you're the largest producer of any good product or service, as that particular industry goes, the state of the economy goes as well. As you can see in our chart here, not only just crude oil, but this is a really good pictorial of many things that actually are produced using byproducts of petroleum. You can see across infant pacifiers, cameras, CDs, extension cords, and a whole host of others. So again, we are the world's largest producer of this product. We realize that certainly there's environmental issues. I don't want to skirt that. But again, it's a very important industry, not only to the United States, but to the world in general.
Now, and Chuck, before you move on, I'll just add
certainly
to that, and we've talked about this a couple of times with everyone. It really impacts everyday life. I think in the media,
Absolutely.
a lot of people focus in on fuel consumption, large scale production, right? Automobiles. The reality of it is, it's an essential part of pretty much every manufacturing process and component that we use out there, and hence why it's so critical and why it's something we focus in on and watching as it comes to managing client portfolios.
Boy, so very well said, Michael. And that's why maybe we can spend a little more time in this chart. I think you just nailed it there in explaining to our investors and our listeners why it's so important. So I'm going to walk through this chart here, but on the bottom left-hand corner, the chart begins December 31st of 2023. The green line represents the price of a barrel of crude oil. The right vertical axis would indicate the bottom price of 63, where it stood in December of 2023. And of course, the right hand, sorry about that, little happy fingers, the right hand upper part of this chart goes up to 83. Now, I know there's a point of no return. What is it? Is it $100 a barrel oil higher? Certainly, when it gets to a certain level, it's going to pinch the consumer. But we said, Michael, higher, healthier price between 70 and 85. Ironically, today we're at 78 and change right in the middle. But look at this line here, Michael. The green is crude oil. The black is the S&P 500. It was at 4,600 at the end of last year. We're up in excess of 5,300. And the beauty of this chart, Michael, is as crude oil has gone up, the market has gone up. When crude oil peaked and started to go down, we see the same linear path and, of course, turning upwards. Not a perfect positive correlation, but certainly close enough to signify, again, that a healthy price of crude oil, healthy price of the U.S. economy, and certainly a healthy stock market. Let's give, if we could, a certain perspective on this, Michael. I grew up in the 1970s. Many of our clients were working then, or maybe just starting in their careers. They certainly remember sitting in long gas lines. We had the OPEC oil embargoes of 1973, and of course of 79. Back in 1979, it was the peak of the U.S. average household spending on gasoline. It got up to 6%. Well, you can see where we were in COVID. We were down to 1.5. Now we're at 2.5, but we're nowhere near where we were, even though oil is higher. What that basically is saying, Michael, is because we've begun our own production in our own country, we're not dependent on foreign sources for this. So I'd like to do a little storyline here, if I could, Michael, because I know, look, as you know, I live in California, and out here we see $5 to $6 a gallon gasoline, and I would wish that on no one. I don't like paying that any more than anybody else. But I want to try to make the link, Michael, if I could, that if you strip out gasoline and you look at its percentage of expenses within the average household budget, it's not as bad as what people think. So let's go to the next slide here, and I want to walk through kind of this case study, if you will. So let's just say that the average, if you will, driver drives 12,000 miles per year. And let's just say that the average mile per gallon is 20. It's probably more than that, but 20. So the average household's going to purchase 600 gallons of gasoline per year. Let's use the $4 per gallon. So 4 times 600 is 2,400. That's the annual expense, if you will, which you say on average. Now, let's say we have a recession, Michael, and the price of gasoline drops because crude oil dropped. Remember, last year was at 63. That was indicating that potentially 2024 was a recession year. We said here at Kingdom Folk and Financial, no, that's not the case. That oil is going to stay at a higher, healthier rate. Well, let's say it goes to 3. And what ends up happening? Well, you still drive the same. Let's assume you're now spending $1,800 on gas, right? What have you done? You've saved $600. However, what normally happens, Michael, to the stock market when we go into recession? We see equity prices drop 20%. Now, our clients wouldn't do this, but those that aren't working with a sound advisor would say, oh my goodness, my equity prices have gone from 500,000 to 400, right? The market dropped 20%, their portfolio dropped 20%. What do people do that don't have a sound financial plan? They panic, right? And they sell and they move to cash. They save $600 a year in gasoline, but because the stock market dropped, crude oil drops, we then see people's net worth drop significantly because many panic and sell. So if you put this in the proper perspective, I think people realize that, again, being the world's largest producer of this good in this industry actually allows for higher oil prices to indicate a healthy economy and a healthy stock market.
Very well said, Chuck, and that's an excellent example. And I think for everyone watching this, this is important to understand. But as that has changed in the last decade, and that we are one of the largest, currently I say we are one of, because those numbers can fluctuate and change.
Right.
Politics do play a role in that, unfortunately. And so as we look at that balance, now that healthier gas price goes locks with our economy. So we've gone from inverse to being connected, as you've said, correlated. And it should make people feel better when prices are in that healthy range. It's kind of like inflation. 8% is bad, but 2% is almost equally as bad, right? In reality, it's too low. Oil's similar. We've seen over $100 a barrel in the last 20 years, right? We can go back. We don't have those charts today. So I think this is important for people to understand. It's not just price at the pump, but it impacts everything in our expense wallet, right? Everything we need to run our households, manage them, live our daily lives. We often equate it only to what we see at the gas pump, but that's a small percentage of most people's budgets on a regular basis. So excellent, excellent example, good call out. Hopefully everyone hears that, understands that. While this is something to watch, it's a critical component. It's actually in a very healthy position.
Boy, you nailed it, Michael. Thanks for the confirmation on that. Hey, got one more thing here left, right? We got our election slide, right? We've been doing this now.
Yeah, what's going on here? Let's put this into some perspective.
Real quick, this was just the relationship between, I'm sorry, jump the gun. My goodness, sorry about that. This was just what you just laid out. The positive correlation between the United States stock market and the strong US dollar. So I jumped the gun on this, but sorry about that.
That's right. People can go back and read that slide then when they watch this later. They can hit that pause, stop right here, take a chance to read that.
Yeah, because you nailed it. And you talked about the topsy-turvy, but this high correlation now between the two has stood the test of time. But I love what we're going to show here in this next one. And you led me, you said, Chuck, I want you to go out and find this if you can. And your crack research staff got running on it. And here's the chart. So I'll comment a little, and then I'd like you to finish out on this if you could, because you speak to it so well. So we bifurcated the entire election process, meaning the presidential election process, by dates. So we start out in our chart here, January. So this would be January of 2024. And we laid out in turquoise, let's call it, light colored blue, what the stock market historically has done during the primary season, what it does in non-election years. But here's the key. What does it do after the primaries? And that's what we're getting into right now. A lot of people don't realize this, Michael. They think, oh my goodness, I should kind of sell in May, go away, and just wait for the election, and we'll see if it works out the way I hope it does. Boy, oh boy, if you look going back to 1932, and that's 90 plus years of data, you can see here that you actually pick up steam in this point in time here once the election happens. And look at just the tracking of this line. They actually meet over a year later. So this would be in June of 2025, if this trajectory works itself out. We're literally, it's a non-event, Michael, after it's occurred. As the market settles in, the new president or the elected president picks their cabinet. We know who the Fed chair is. They start their economic policies, the bantering back with Congress. And this just simply shows, Michael, it's a fool's game to want to sell during the primary season and wait it out.
Yeah, and before we move to the last slide, I'll highlight a couple of things. You said it well, and we've been saying this all along. The markets love election years, presidential election years, right? They really do. It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. The next slide will show that a little bit more. But there are some significant differences in an election year, and we're living through one actually as we're taping this, right? So if you look at the chart, normally that sell in May, go away, dip kind of happens. We get the summer lull. People talk about that all the time, right? The dog days of summer and what happens. But in an election year, those timetables come off a little bit. And so while we do anticipate a little bit of a bump in the road somewhere in the summer months, it ends on an upswing until we get right up until that election. And that last 5 to 6 weeks before the election is always a scary moment for the market. It's kind of that second guessing what's going to happen until that decision is made. And so we don't anticipate it being any different this year. I expect we'll continue to see this market chug its way forward as long as the oil numbers, interest rate numbers, as long as all those we've been talking about still are strong. We'll continue to see this market perform well during this presidential election year. Now, I do want to say we get that personally, morally, privately. There's a lot of at stake in any election when it comes to our values and what we want to see happen. But from a performance of the market, businesses still function, they will adapt. And so the market that we're talking about is what we're focused in on. And we think that will continue to perform well this year.
Absolutely. Michael, I think, unfortunately, I threw you a little curveball here, but that big kahuna chart that we were going to show, we're going to save for our listeners and our clients for the next month.
Perfect. Nope. That works. Gives them something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
We'll tackle that. I want to wrap up here. We're about at 15 minutes. So lots of information you said. Thank you all for being here, for taking the time, whatever you're doing, to watch this. We love and appreciate your support of us. As always, feel free to call us with questions and tune in next month for the next letter in our acronym for this year, which will be the U. Have a great day.